Hi, this is Peter Woolfolk speaking. Now, first of all, thank you so very much for listening to the podcast. Now, I am very excited to let you know that the podcast is now available on Amazon Alexa. You know the drill. Simply say, Alexa, play Public Relations Review Podcast, and she'll take it from there. And again, thank you for listening. And if you enjoy the program, please become a subscriber. Now, on to the podcast.
Welcome. This is the Public Relations Review Podcast, a program to discuss the many facets of public relations with seasoned professionals, educators, authors, and others. Now, here is your host, Peter Woolfolk.
Welcome to the Public Relations Review Podcast and to our listeners all across America and around the world. First, let me thank all of our listeners for a great start in 2022. We have already received a rating as one of the best public relations podcasts in the nation. Listeners keep growing. We are heard in over 1,500 cities spread across 107 countries around the world. So I will continue to produce podcast content that provides value to all of you. Now, global warming is a subject we continue to hear about. However, for our purposes here, little, if anything, is said about how public relations professionals are connected to global warming and associated issues. My guest today has serious involvement in sustainability and the environment. For example, her firm, Pineapple Tweed Public Relations and Marketing, provides both time and services to set up a sustainable business forum with 25 CEOs of top companies in her town. In addition, she is also involved in sustainable development, the environment, building an entrepreneurial ecosystem, and more. So joining me today all the way from Honolulu, Hawaii, is Pea-a, CEO of Pineapple Tweed Public Relations and Marketing. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me on. And as we say in Hawaii, mahalo.
Oh, thank you. So first of all, tell me how you wound up selecting Pineapple Tweed as the name for your firm.
Well, we were actually naming another product and came across this name. Back in the days when they started manufacturing aloha shirts, which is kind of standard wear in Hawaii and now spread across the country, they took the remnants of the fabric being used and they wove those together, and the resulting fabric was actually called Pineapple Tweed. Mm-hmm. So it really worked very well for the concept that we did as a business, as well as kind of combining our place in Hawaii and our former relationship with the East Coast.
Well, great. So now let's begin about hearing how you got interested in and then bringing your PR skills to work in areas such as the sustainable development, entrepreneurial ecosystem, and other related areas.
Well, I think environment has been something that I've been interested in for many, many years, even before it became a fad. And I was actually quite surprised that it took this long for people to understand the impact. But in Hawaii, I was very fortunate to be asked by people who had known of my work previously with coral reef, with saving the coral reef and the impact of the reef on Hawaii, to become involved in a very new type of organization. It was called Hawaii Green Growth, and it's essentially the network model. So it is a public-private partnership, and it includes business, government, NGOs, agencies. It's really quite massive. There's about 150 something members of this, and they asked me to be involved in the communications aspect. So I had one actually rule before I joined, and that was to say, I need to see results. I don't want to be involved in something else that is just a study and put on a shelf. I would like to see accountability. And that is something that this particular organization has done beautifully. They have come up with something called the Aloha Plus Challenge, which has been universally adopted in Hawaii through several administrations at this point. And it goes towards 6 goals that essentially accommodate all of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals.
Mm-hmm.
So that has been the beginning of it, and I cannot even begin to tell you how proud I am. One of my other stipulations was that a business had to be involved, and the organization has, now I think we're in our third year of something called the Sustainability Business Forum. There are some 25 leading companies in Hawaii, their CEOs, who meet on a quarterly basis. It is a Chatham rules, if you will. People discuss, but don't necessarily, don't discuss out. It's very private. It is confidential. They allow one another to understand each other's problems, and they have already come up with a joint action, which is really heartwarming and gratifying.
So when you say come up with a joint action, who will this, who will it affect? What is the desired outcome? Explain how all of this is going to, I guess, better our environment, and then your piece in this process.
Okay, well, I was one of the individuals who insisted on a business involvement and also helped put this group together. I am now basically a member as their communications individual. So I think let me tell you what the Aloha Plus goals are. It's clean energy transformation, local food production and consumption, natural resource management, it's green workforce development, and smart sustainable communities, solid waste reduction. These goals were actually developed by this network. So people understand them, and they are all very, very, very impactful to our environment. For example, in Hawaii, we import something like 90% of our food, and that has to change. And so we're looking at ways to make that happen. One of the first things that this group of 25 CEOs did, they represent tens of thousands of employees. We're small, so that might sound very small to you in Tennessee, but they all signed up to reduce their energy consumption, and they have made amazing progress as a group and impacted our energy consumption here. They're also developing ESG standards, and that's the environmental social governance that impacts investors, and investors are now looking at. It's basically asking companies to look at the risk of climate and their impact on the social systems that they are operating in. So they are developing ESGs that pertain to Hawaii, where we are unique in the middle of the ocean. So we do have different problems and challenges than other companies might. So they're doing that. And then the other thing that they immediately did is put money towards a project to capture carbon, because again, flying to Hawaii takes it wastes a lot of carbon, so puts a lot of CO2 out. So we want to have a project where you can buy credits, for example, to offset that carbon, the carbon that you use when you're flying here.
Now, when you say buy credits to offset, tell me how that works, and what happens with the credits that you get. What can you do with them, or the companies do with them?
Well, it's not that. It's basically you as an individual can do this, and you can do this in other markets. It's actually very strictly controlled so that there is no mismanagement. We worked with the Nature Conservancy of Hawaii, and they have a forest on the Big Island, which is actually called Hawaii. And we wanted to see if the amount of oxygen, the carbon offset that this forest manufactures, if you will, would work with the carbon market. But essentially, to be a little bit more clear about it, if you want to offset what you are burning, you can buy a credit that the money goes to our forest, and it would go towards management of that forest to keep it going so that what you have spent, what you have actually emitted, will be offset by the oxygen that the forest creates, right? Mm-hmm. So we're still in the process. We have come a long way in understanding what all is required and whatever, but we will continue that. It would be lovely to have that as an option for people who travel here and care about the environment.
So and correct me if I'm wrong now, what I'm hearing is that right now the audience for this particular project that you're working on are companies in this business forum. Is that accurate?
No. I'm
Okay.
so sorry. In order to do this study, in order to actually to have a market such as this, a carbon offset project, it has to pass certain standards, and it's a long and involved process, and it takes a lot of money. And this group of CEOs put up the money to make this project, at least to start this project.
Mm-hmm. So how does this, I guess I'm also asking then how does causing a behavioral change, if you will, get down to the everyday consumer, so to speak?
Well, that's one of the nice things about the Aloha Plus Challenge. We have one of the accountability aspect is actually done on a dashboard, which is very unique. As a matter of fact, the United Nations has recognized Hawaii for its leadership in sustainability. Mm-hmm. And part of it is our dashboard. The dashboard actually looks at all of these goals, and we've added other goals, as a matter of fact, as you go along. And it's transparent. So we can see if our utility company is doing, what are they doing towards reducing their carbon footprint? What are the other companies, for example, doing to do that? What are our goals, and where are we at? Right, so we can tell if we're reaching our energy goals, or if we're not. So the dashboard you can actually see that at alohaPlusChallenge.gov.Hawaii. But the public is involved, and it has reached now this idea of this transparent open public dashboard has reached other islands. For example, Guam is doing it, and we're looking at some other islands in the Pacific that are also trying to adopt this method of public-private partnership, of transparency, of accountability, so that everyone can be involved. And what's happening here is that we have school children and community groups doing their own projects that work to help our sustainability here in Hawaii. Mm-hmm. We are one of the first, we were one of the first UN 2030 hubs. We are the only one in North America and the only one in the Pacific Islands. And that is essentially, again, recognition by the United Nations that reaching these sustainability goals is going to be bottom up. It's not necessarily going to be top down. We need everyone involved. And so community action at the local level is incredibly important.
We'll talk about, and maybe you just sort of did that, because I'm still just wondering how the everyday person benefits or recognizes the benefits from what it is that you're doing. Is that because they can look at these dashboards that you have and see that certain things have gotten better over a period of time? And if so, what are they, and what are some of the other things that they can personally realize as a benefit from these activities?
Well, one of the things that we didn't realize in the beginning also was that a lot has to happen on the government level, right? So the first thing that happened was the adoption of the Aloha Plus Challenge unanimously by the legislature, and we have county mayors, and everyone has, and as I mentioned before, through I think we're on our fourth administration at this point, have unanimously adopted these goals and worked towards them. So each of the counties, and with counties I mean Maui and Kauai and Hawaii Island and Oahu, have all adopted versions of this that speak to their own environment. And so it kind of trickles to, and there are bills that are constantly being introduced, and there are some bills that have come together generated from the public-private partnership from individuals in that, where everyone can actually support it. So we come together in places of agreement. There are always going to be trade-offs in things that happen, but this group, this networking idea, actually promotes consensus in understanding that we can only agree on certain things, not on everything, but let's move forward on the things that we can agree on. So we have bills, and that have passed that deal with our natural resource management, for example. We're now looking at how do we deal with sustainable tourism. So, and these are, so it generates from our public-private partnership up to government, down to counties, down to individuals. And individuals are encouraged, like our school children are making projects based on these goals.
Okay. Well, one of the other things that I mentioned that you were involved in, and I need some understanding of what it is that entrepreneurial ecosystem. Explain what that is and how that works.
Well, several years ago, Hawaii took, I think a lot of areas really looked at Silicon Valley and what was happening around Massachusetts and what's actually happening around D.C. The startup community, the entrepreneurial community, were making the environment much stronger, and there was so much innovation, and so it was attracting really very intelligent and forward-thinking people. And the outcome of these entrepreneurial activities were very beneficial to the community. So we, as a small island, we have a very small market, and as a result, also we really don't have a lot of venture capital. I became involved with the very first venture capital firm, which was an individual who I actually dubbed the father of venture capital in Hawaii, Billy Richardson, and he started a venture capital fund here, and also involved with a group on the mainland who came to Hawaii and helped us start with conferences and education and bringing venture capitalists to Hawaii so they could see what was happening here. We had to start really slowly because we didn't have a lot of people making companies because it didn't seem logical. At this point, now this is several years later now, almost 20 years later, we have several accelerators pointing at different types of industries. We have tons of entrepreneurs. We have the beginning of, as a matter of fact, we're building an entrepreneurial center at the University of Hawaii. And that's to encourage the entrepreneurship from the very beginning at school and bringing together the various disciplines so that you can actually create some of these wonderful companies. We have Blue Startups, which is probably one of our earlier accelerators, and I am still a mentor there and help them and basically working with the companies on communication issues. I helped from the very beginning idea and for Mana Up, which essentially goes away is an accelerator for companies that are consumer packaged goods in Hawaii. And that was a really new idea because we were initially concentrating on technology just like everybody else. But we also want to encourage people to have businesses and careers and longevity here in Hawaii, and that really works well for us with the consumer packaged goods that have to be Hawaii, true to Hawaii, Hawaii sourced, headquartered in Hawaii, made in Hawaii to the extent possible. Does that help?
Well, it certainly does, because what I'm hearing you say that some of those entrepreneurial companies, as you said, they're locally sourced and manufactured there. Therefore, you do not have to import them from the U.S. or other places. It helps generate income or jobs. And I would assume that all these new entrepreneurs are, let's say, environmentally friendly in what they do and how they go about it. That is part of the. I think one of the things about Hawaii and doing public relations in Hawaii is the respect for the culture of Hawaii. The culture of Hawaii essentially is all about sustainability. Hawaii was able to sustain itself. It worked with a really wonderful system where it understood the relationship from land to sea. And so they were able to sustain themselves entirely without any help from any import from anywhere else. So the environmental sustainability, malama of the Aina, if you will, and malama is help, Aina is land, and a respect for one another, which is essentially aloha,
and understanding how we're all interconnected is just part of Hawaii. And if you live here, you respect that and you practice it.
Let me ask you, because I know that Hawaii has a lot of greenery, forestation, and that sort of thing. So is there any way that obviously that's benefiting you and the entire population and environment there? How do you measure and show people how that's helping benefit everyone there?
Well, actually, we're looking at, for the very first time, we're looking at a fee, so that people have to help us maintain our greenery, our oceans, our parks. Mm-hmm. We have not ever charged anyone, with the exception of some of our sea areas. Hanauma Bay, for example, is one of the first places where we actually asked people to watch a video so that they could understand the impact of humans on the fish and on the reef, on the water, and then they charged. We are now looking at charging for other parks and places so that our visitors can really understand and appreciate the fragility and the very uniqueness of Hawaii. It is really a very, very, it's a gift. It's a gift to the world, this island. It is absolutely stunningly beautiful.
Well, and it certainly, from everything I've seen, it certainly looks that way. So, as you said, environmentally, it probably bests a lot of obviously places in the U.S. simply because of where you are and the other activities that you are engaged in to help move that forward.
Yes, yes. And that's one of the beauties, actually, of being in a smaller community. It's also a beauty of being in public relations, because we do get involved. My practice is basically driven by passion. Okay. I work with organizations and companies that I trust in their integrity and their ability to move forward and their desire to do that. And we're just very fortunate with the people that we're working with. One of our companies, AHL, is an architectural firm, and the CEO is a leader in the community. She's also a member of the Sustainability Business Forum, a leader in the community in the agriculture and engineering construction community, talking about how do they lessen their impact on the built environment. Mm-hmm. The built environment, for example, is one of the leading causes for CO2 emissions in our environmental focus in our group. So they are looking at ways to reduce waste, energy consumption, water management. It's all of those, and it's just weaving all of these things together is something that you can do in Hawaii because of our closeness in our society. I actually believe that cities and counties can do this anywhere if they just start looking at one another in the same way. Mm-hmm. We have in Hawaii a benefit, as I said, because the culture has already inculcated values here that have been here since the beginning.
Just out of curiosity, again, because of where you are, the foliage you have there, you're around the ocean, is there any sort of documentation that might say that those who live in Hawaii have a better overall health because maybe they live off the ocean or some of those sort of things as compared to some of the circumstances in the U.S. which don't have those benefits?
There is. Actually, I have to check and see if this is still true. But traditionally, the people living in Hawaii have a longer lifespan, mm-hmm. and are healthier. Now, we do obviously have some problems. We have a diabetes problem, for example, okay. And as any other community, we have some other issues like with drug use, for example. But overall, yes. I think I will try to find it and get it to you, Peter.
Yeah. Now, just out of curiosity, it just sounds like the idyllic place to live. And because, there are not factories there churning out a lot of smoke and all those other sort of things, that overall that adds to the beauty of living in an area such as Hawaii.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And part of it is, again, we have to protect what we have. We are islands Hawaii, like the other islands in the Pacific, are on the forefront of climate change. Mm-hmm. We are small. Sea level rise is going to be something that we have to deal with. The drought in California affects our food supply. Everything we have to learn as a planet how interrelated, interlocked we all are. And as islands, we are really one of the reasons islands are leading in the climate change agenda is the fact that we're on the forefront. It'll hit us before it hits you.
Well, I've enjoyed a lot of what you've said, and so Pia, let me ask you: are there any other things that you think we should hear about what it is you're doing before we close?
I think the two things that I'm very passionate about that you hit upon, thank you very much, is our leadership in sustainability. And our goal is to show that you can make a difference as a community and show the way to do that. And hopefully other communities will understand and adopt these measures. And the other thing is the growth of our entrepreneurial system. We have made it Hawaii, and we are growing to the point that now we are actually putting a huge multi-million-dollar center of entrepreneurship into our university. So I think that, we, as a small island, we work together. The cultural values here are strong and bind us and guide us. And we just hope you come and visit.
Well, thank you so much, very much for that invitation. And also thank you so very, very much for being a guest in our show. I think I've certainly been enlightened at some of the great things that are going on that you're doing, particularly in the sustainability area. And I'm sure our listeners would appreciate it as well. My guest today has been Pea-a, who is the principal of Pineapple Tweed Public Relations in Honolulu, Hawaii. If you've enjoyed the show, please, we'd like to have a review from you. And, of course, let your friends know, and we'll look for you on the next edition of the Public Relations Review podcast. Thank you.
This podcast is produced by Communication Strategies, an award-winning public relations and public affairs firm headquartered in Nashville, Tennessee. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, this is Peter Woolfolk. First, let me say thank you so much for being a listener. Now, I want to alert you to our shiny new podcast website located at podpage.com. However, you can go directly to the podcast site located at publicrelationsreviewpodcast.com. There, you can contact me through email. You can leave a voice message. You can leave a review. You can read an episode blog and frequently learn about the podcast guests. You might also want to suggest podcast topic ideas or even suggest a guest. You can also let me know if you would like to receive our podcast listener logo that you can post on your social media. So I look forward to hearing from you about our new podcast website. Thank you so much for listening to the Public Relations Review podcast, and have a great day.